Nick, we're doing a solo list of games, so really there shouldn't be two of us.
You want me to head out?
Yeah, I'd love it.
All right,
I'd love it if you did.
I'll head out.
I already miss him.
Just kidding, I'm back.
He's back just like that. He didn't go to Nebraska.
Wow. Yeah, what's up, everybody? I'm Nick.
I'm Mike.
We're the brothers Murph, and we're going to be talking about our favorite solo games. So some of these games are going to be solo-only games,
Yes.
where one player is the max player count.
Correct.
And other than these games are going to be games that you can play solo if you want to.
Many games today are solo-able.
Yes, because there's a really thriving solo board game market out there. People really like to solo board games.
Absolutely.
And so more and more publishers have solo variants in their games, and a lot of them are pretty darn good.
Absolutely. They've gotten really great. There's all sorts of different types of solo games. We're going to talk about 10 that we enjoy right now. Sometimes some of these are ones that mostly you play, mostly I play, some ones that we each like to solo individually, but never together.
Before we get into that, though, we want to say there's going to be another top 10 and 10 more games like to solo over on our Patreon. So if you want to check that out, please check that out over on our Patreon. We really appreciate the support. It's what allows us to do what we do for a living.
Please support today.
Thank you all so much. Let's go ahead and get to number 10.
So number 10 is Orleans. Now,
Yes,
one
indeed.
thing that we always like to bring up with this is that Orleans, the base game as you buy it, is not soloable. But they've
Unfortunately,
made
yes.
several expansions, mostly including the Orleans Invasion expansion, which has solo modes in different scenarios you can
So
even
the
play.
Orleans Invasion, that's why it's number 10, is because you technically need an expansion to play it solo.
True.
But the Orleans Invasion, one has a co-op mode, a two-player only mode, and then it has 3 different solo scenarios. And I believe one of the other expansions also has kind of a random solo scenario in there.
Yes.
But they're really, really fun. They're all different. So Orleans is a bag building game where, again, at this point, depending on what kind of version of Orleans you're playing,
You're doing
whether
some
it's
different stuff.
Invasion or base game, you're kind of doing different stuff. But you have these followers you're putting into a bag, and you're pulling them out of your bag, and then you have your player board, which has a bunch of different actions on them. And those actions will require you to put the followers on them to activate them.
Yes.
So one might require like a fisherman and a farmer. So you have to put those on there, and then you can activate that. And so normal Orleans, you're like going around, building up trading posts, getting goods, just general Euro stuff. It's very beige. Love it.
Collecting things.
And the solo game deals with that as well, but one thing in the game is, in the base game, there's all these events. The events are kind of random. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad, but the solo ones have set events, so you know what's going to happen in what order. And so it's kind of like one of those solo games where you could really prepare for stuff, and they're really, really tough.
Yeah,
but
you're trying to achieve basically certain objectives. You need to have certain things done by the end of the game.
Yeah, they're all going to have either like 4 or 5 objectives that you try to complete, and then sometimes like, hey, this whole part of the game just doesn't exist in this specific solo game. They're really, really fun. I like Orleans a lot. It's one of our favorite multiplayer games.
Yeah.
Really good solo, really good competitive, really, really good solo. Orleans is just incredible, but it's really, really fun to play solo.
Yeah, I like that they have different scenarios too, so if you want to focus on one aspect of the game or another one, you can kind of like almost practice effectively like the different areas of the game and try to like master them all. So there's a lot to explore there with Orleans, again, with Invasion to be fair, but with that put together, it's a pretty good solo game.
Indeed. So number 9 is mostly one that you solo.
Yes, I played this quite a bit. This is Friday.
Indeed.
So
Have you ever won?
What?
Have you ever won?
Yes, I have.
Okay,
At this point,
wow,
I've
that's
won.
a flex. You can put that on a resume.
I've won maybe one handful of times, maybe 4 or 5 times total. It's hard.
Like
It's from
walking into
Freedom and
game stores
Freeze.
being like, I've won Friday before.
Have you won Friday? I don't think so, because it's only Thursday.
Very difficult. And this is a solo-only game.
Solo-only game. So you are basically the character Friday, and you are Robinson Crusoe's just washed ashore, and they're big old dum-dum. They ain't got no skills.
Big old dum-dum.
All right, so what you're trying to do is you're trying to help them gain skills and face down challenges that are before them that might be like pirates you're ultimately facing down, or like wildlife and stuff and traps and such. And basically you're going to get these different again, challenges in front of you, which are going to allow you to draw a certain amount of cards from the Robinson Crusoe deck, and you're trying to get a certain amount of successes.
Yep.
Now, at the beginning, the Robinson Crusoe's deck is terrible. Mostly it's zeros, there's negative ones, and there's a couple of positive ones. And so if you get a negative one and the challenge required 1 success, now you need 2 successes to get back to 0, then into 1.
Yeah.
And so, but every time you succeed in a challenge, that challenge gets flipped over and becomes a card that gets added to Robinson Crusoe's deck, which will have skills, like basically abilities that you can do, like draw more cards for free, gain some life back, exchange cards, all sorts of different things like that. And you're going to go through this kind of challenge deck 3 times. Every time you go through it, it goes into the second wave and the third wave where the challenges become harder, but hopefully your deck is now...
You would hope so.
You've culled out some of the bad cards, and you are working with more skills. You can trigger more stuff. And if you ever run out of life, basically if I can draw 2 cards for free and I need to draw a third one and I choose to do so, you have to pay a life to do that. Now you can choose to go and keep drawing cards and extend. So this game comes down a lot to like, when do I just give up on this and let it be and not lose more life?
I always like that in games.
Yeah.
Like, what point do you cut and run?
Yeah, what point do you cut and
you
run?
have to strategically do so. Like, Airland at Sea is that way. It's like, what point do you give up on one of the theaters of war?
Am I hurting myself by sticking in this, or is it going to be worth it in the end? And so you're trying to balance those things. Yeah, so it's really fun. If you make it through the deck 3 times, you ultimately face down 2 pirate cards, which are like, you have to get a ton of successes, but you now have a pretty cool deck. That you build up. So there's kind of like this deck building aspect, and then that kind of push your luck, or again, that whole tactical retreat, whatever it is, mechanism is really interesting. And it's one that you don't have a high success rate, but it's easy to play. It's fun to play. The app is decent. I wouldn't say it's great, but it works. And then the physical game is really fun to kind of just like get into. And I play like on lunch breaks a lot back in the day. So Friday is number 9. I recommend it.
Indeed. Number 8 is going to kind of encompass an entire publisher. This is going to be Burn Cycle, but this is really most Chip Theory games, if not all of them. Some Chip Theory games are only soloable, but Chip Theory make these really, really huge games with a bunch of poker chips. Too Many Bones, Cloud Spire, all the Cloud Spire seems like the one that's probably the least. Well, it's very good solo, but I know that you kind of want to go head to head. But Burn Cycle, all of their games, especially Too Many Bones, most people like Chip Theory is built off the backs of solo gamers.
Yeah, absolutely.
Solo gamers love Chip Theory games because they're always really good solos, really big, robust games. Burn Cycle is my personal favorite one, although we're getting more into Too Many Bones now, so that might change at some point. But I really like Burn Cycle. Burn Cycle, you are robots, and you robots that are repressed by humanity and stuff like that. You're all kind of intelligent thinking robots, and you are trying to break free the shackles of humanity, but you're doing it through a heist. You're not doing it through like coming in guns ablaze and ripping people's heads off and stuff like that. Because a lot of these robots are like janitor robots. They're just like sweeping stuff up.
They're not army robots.
No, they're not. Yeah, they're not these huge
They're white
fighters.
collar robots.
Kind of, yeah. And so in Burn Cycle, it's a co-op game, and you are all different robots, and you are performing a heist. You're performing a mission. There's a whole bunch of different missions in 3 different corporations in the base game. The expansion has a 4th corporation, and there's like 8 different missions for each corporation. And that mission, you're gonna have to do certain stuff. You might have to like sneak into this room and like access the terminal and like hack the terminal and then break into the CEO's office to grab this key and stuff. And so you're just pulling a heist is all it is. And you can fight, but you really shouldn't, because 1, you're not very strong, and then 2, you're trying to not be seen and not be heard.
There's like a whole alert system.
It's like breaking through walls. You can, but you probably shouldn't, because it's going to alert the guards, because there's always guards just patrolling around the facility. It's really, really fun. It's a good co-op game, but just with more people, it just goes slower. It's already a huge game. There's so many like edge cases in like Chip Theory games. There's like so many little rules. The games are humongous that I just prefer them solo, particularly Burn Cycle. I'm like, then I can just have a couple different robots. I can kind of just get in my own little world and just like, I'm gonna move this one over here, move this one over here, I'm gonna go do this one.
It's just play with the puzzle. And if you're checking rules for edge case stuff or keywords and things, you're not like holding anyone up to do it, so who cares?
Exactly. And so a lot of Chip Theory games, but Burn Cycle for me, and then Too Many Bones particularly too. I know a lot of people just solo Too Many Bones. And they're really, really great for that. And so I really like Chip Theory games. I really like Burn Cycle, mostly because of the theme. I just think it's cool. And so that's number 8. Let's get number 7.
Number 7 is a classic game that we discovered a long time ago. Really is maybe better as a solo game. This is Ex Libris.
It is indeed.
This is a game about running a mystical library where you are trying to organize your stacks of books, and you're trying to put them all in alphabetical order. It's mystical. There's like gelatinous cubes, but there's also the Dewey Decimal System.
There is a Dewey Decimal System.
All right, this is very important. We follow that. So you're trying to make these stacks of magical books and monster manuals and things, and put them into order. And in the solo game, what's really fun is it's you versus the public library. The public library is just a data dump. There's no organization whatsoever. It's just absolutely a mess, but they have a bajillion books. And so by sheer force of mass, they are quite a valuable library to have around. So you're trying to put together a nice little neat and orderly library and dealing with the onslaught of books that are being collected by the by your solo opponent. And what's really fun is the way it works is really simple. Anytime that cards are getting discarded or they don't get grabbed by you or something, they are going to the public library in a stack, face down stack. Boom, they're already collected. So that's just easy to manage. Basically, you look at any cards that didn't come your way, over there and done. The other thing that is just kind of like a quality of life thing with this is that there's some some graphic design miscues in Ex Libris, which are really unfortunate, where you have these location tiles which you can go to exchange books, get books, activate abilities, all sorts of stuff.
Move yourself around,
Move yourself around, move your stuff, but there's small text on all of them
that
are
tells you what the
important.
location does.
Yes, this is kind of like a game where, like, if this came out now, it would just be iconography.
Yes, it would be.
And you could redo this, and they should redo this, with just iconography, which you can see from afar and have a little reference sheet for what those things mean.
Yeah.
But it's all written on text, so it's very hard to play, because if it's across the room, I cannot read what that says.
In front of you, it's hard to read.
It's hard to read. So at least in a solo game, you can put all of those directly in front of you. And it's just easier to manage. And one thing that's interesting is in a multiplayer game, you start off with a few locations and you gradually add more and more and more. In the solo game, you start with a bunch, but you whittle them down. So you have tighter and tighter options and more restrictions on where your workers can go throughout the game, which I think
it makes it more
adds that tension.
Yeah, it's tough, and you're deciding which ones to get rid of, which is super interesting.
Yeah.
I definitely prefer this game solo. For a long time, it was my favorite solo game. My favorite game to solo. It's gone down a little bit. I've just played it a bunch at this point, but I still really love it. But yeah, it's better solo. It's interesting, and one thing you'll see with a lot of this, we'll bring this up a lot, is the public library is very easy to manage.
Yes.
Just every time you discard stuff, they don't really do anything. We really like solo games where the solo AI opponent is not really big and robust. I just kind of want to be able to play the game as is and maybe have a little stuff to do, and this one is very much that. You just discard over there, counter points at the end of the game, that's it. They're not like, you're not playing two games, essentially.
Yeah, which I think back in the day, maybe we felt a little bit different about that, but now I'm like, just honestly, like, keep it smooth and easy, and that still gives you an opponent that you can win or lose against, which is cool.
All right, that's number 7. Let's get number 6.
Number 6 is Lost Ruins of Arnok.
Indeed.
This game is super fun, multiplayer as well, but the solo is another one that, like, we kind of have discovered more recently.
Yes.
Works really well.
Really, really well.
And they're even leaning further in that direction with the newest expansion that's coming out soon, where there's a 1 to 2 or 2 player campaign you can play. So, like, they're really leaning into the solo.
Well, they even had like a solo campaign online, and I think this new expansion might be kind of like that, but bigger kind of thing.
And I use the browser and stuff because you can basically create an AI opponent where you can scale the difficulty up or down for yourself.
Nice in solo games.
Yeah, they're basically gonna have a stack of actions that they do, and they flip over, and basically you're gonna use all the other player colors that you aren't using, the architects, and they're just going to kind of do the classic thing of, like, they're going to block spots.
They're going to get your way.
They're going to work up tracks. They're going to shuffle around the stacks. They're going to take guardians from you. They're going to do things that honestly simulate other players pretty well.
Yes.
So I can just play the game that I'm playing, and then I was like, oh, they took the gem spot. No.
Yeah,
And like that happens in the game.
Yeah,
so it does a good job of creating, like, realistic opponents and getting in your way. And then you can just kind of play your normal game from there.
Yeah, and this one again, like it's not a you have to work that AI. You have to do what they need to do, but it's pretty simple. It's like you flip over a tile, you're gonna put one of them out there. For the most part, that's it.
They might take a card or something that'll be points for them at the end of the game. But again, nothing is complicated, and it lists right there what they do. And so it's quick and easy. It takes basically no brain power.
Yeah, exactly. And I can just focus on my turn, which is really, really fun.
Yeah.
I really like. I played a couple more times recently while you were out of town.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, at home I've almost brought it out a couple times to play it solo because I really like the solo game a lot. I just think it's fun. I also just really like Lost Ruins. So I want to play Lost Ruins often.
Yeah.
And with the solo, I can do that. And so I really like it. It works well. Again, simple, easy, smooth. There's no like, well, what do they do? It's just like, nope, they do it here. They take this card, boom, done. Now I can take my turn.
Yeah.
And it's super, super easy. I really like Lost Ruins, both as multiplayer and as solo, but it's really, really good solo. It's number 6. Let's get number 5. Number 5, you've mostly played.
Yes, this is Paperback Adventures.
It's kind of like Slay the Spire, but with words.
Exactly, which is why I'm so stoked. So we had Paperback back in the day, and we didn't keep it because you enjoy it, but you're not as into word games.
It's a good game that I don't love because I don't like word games very much.
So Nick's not a big fan of those. I am. So when I heard about Paperback Adventures, which is a solo... You can play it co-op together, but it's a solo
meant to
game.
be solo.
That borrows heavily from Slay the Spire, the roguelike, where now you're spelling words and stuff and you're using them to sling attacks and defending yourself against kind of like henchmen and then bosses. And you're going through 3 books that kind of get progressively harder.
Yeah.
Now I say this borrows from Slay the Spire because it absolutely does. There's a lot of elements.
And Tim Fowers, the designer, is literally like, I'm inspired by Slay the Spire.
Calls it Splay the Spire because you splay out your cards to make your words and stuff. But there's like literally like relics in Slay the Spire. There's MacGuffins here because you're a novelist who's like basically got writer's block and you're trying to think up different foes and things to fight to tell your story.
Yeah.
Which is just a cool theme. but it's just nice to have like MacGuffins in there, and that's your relics. And you have items you can get, and you can start triggering more and more stuff. And then the words you spell will give you icons that you can either use for attack or defense and energy and stuff like that. And then all the cards themselves have a special ability. So you can either use the first word in your word or the last letter, I should say, to make use of that ability, but then you have to get rid of that card for the rest of that fight. So you're kind of fighting against time.
Yeah.
It's super duper fun.
See,
it's really
cool. There's different characters that you can play.
There's 3 different characters you can play. They all come with extra bosses and things.
Yeah.
So there's a ton of
Super
content to
cool.
explore. It's got game trace. It's a really high quality product in terms of like the pieces and everything. It's super fun. I just like to get it all out on the table, and I just sit there and I'm like, ooh, make my little words, and I just make a big old mess of it. It is super fun.
Yeah.
There's a really good app for it as well. Absolutely highly recommend the app.
Yeah.
That's Paperback Adventures. It's so good. If you like paperback, you like word games, play that.
Yeah, indeed.
So number 4 game that I never want to play with this bastard again is Ark Nova.
Wow, God.
I'm just kidding. Ark Nova is number 4.
It's hurt feelings.
I'm so
Ark
sorry.
Nova is number 4. Ark Nova is kind of the epitome for me right now of like a shift that we've had, that we kind of talked about earlier in the list, of wanting simple solos. Because
Yes.
Ark Nova in the game has a very simple solo.
Yes.
You're just playing the game normally. This is a game where you're building out a zoo.
You're effectively on a timer.
And you're just on a timer. You have like
Yeah.
essentially like 6 or 7 breaks or whatever it is, and you have to cross your paths by that point. There's a
Right.
conservation path, working on conservation within your zoo, and then an appeal track, which is the most appealing parts of your zoo, which are going to be your animals,
Right.
give you appeal, and you want to cross those paths. And in the solo game, you're just on a timer. Now, on BGG, there is a variant called the Arno variant, which
Yeah.
is essentially a competitor against you that you have to run, and they can win the game. I actually did. There'll be a link up here. I did
it out.
a video
solo-
with the solo
yeah.
variant, and the solo variant works very, very well, and it was made by a user on BGG. It's really cool, but having played that solo variant a couple of times and then recently played just the race one again, I'm like, I just want to play the one on a timer,
Yeah.
which is kind of a reverse.
It's so
Before,
interesting how much we've shifted
we have
in that. But
because my thing is when I'm playing a solo game, for the most part, when I'm playing solo Ark Nova, I don't want to play a different version of Ark Nova. I just want to play Ark Nova, and
That's fair.
the timer just allows me to play the game. I just get to play the game. I'm just on a timer, which does change it a little bit. But it's like I just want a simple thing that I don't have to run. And Ark Nova, the one in the box, is the epitome of that. Although the big, robust Arno variant is really cool and does work very well, I don't want to have to run it. And it's kind of shifted for me personally.
that's fair. It's kind of cool because here it's like, well, depending on your style, go one way or the other.
Exactly, right?
Yeah. You
And
still get to play Ark Nova.
Ark Nova is number 4. We absolutely love Ark Nova, both as a solo game and as a multiplayer game. It's really, really fun. Let's get number 3. Number 3 is going to kind of encompass a couple of different games.
Yes, this is
Essentially deduction
games.
Yes.
Logical puzzle, deduction
Yes.
games. So this is gonna be Turing Machine / Search for Planet X, where you are in both games trying to get to an answer. In
Yes.
Turing Machine, you're trying to get to a 3-number code. And there's going to be different kind of rules that the code will follow that give you hints as to what it may be. In Search for Planet X, you're trying to find the location of Planet X in the night sky.
Yes.
And there are certain rules where Planet X will be in terms of relationship to other types of celestial beings and things like that. And both games can play competitively, and you can play it solo, where you can just kind of work on the puzzle yourself. In Turing Machine, it's just purely working on that puzzle. And in Search for Planet X, you're kind of racing against an opponent that is also, it's a computer opponent,
Well, I guess
literally, that's trying to get to the answer as well.
It's same with Turing Machine, technically. You are technically
That's true.
racing
You are
an
trying to be
opponent.
quicker
Yeah.
than a bot. You're totally
So
right.
yeah, they're
very similar in that way.
You're basically trying to get it done as quick as possible. Even throw something like Black Sonata in here, which is kind of like a hidden movement deduction game.
Yeah.
But it's like, deduction games, ultimately I like solo because I'm not very good at deduction games. So I just lose horribly at them and they just stress me out. But if I'm alone, I can just sit down with, especially Search Planet X, I can just sit down and just play it on my own.
Sure.
And I just don't really care how fast I do it. I just want to figure out the answer.
Yeah, for me, it's like Turing Machine being the one that I play the most. Nick, you play Search for Planet X more often. I just don't care if I beat somebody at this game. I just want to get to the answer. If you get the answer before me, do not tell me it. I don't care. I'm proud of you and all that. I just want to go and answer the question myself. So for this one, it's just kind of like, no one is necessary. I'm good. I can just do this and play and get to my little code. It's kind of like the Wordle.
Yeah.
You get to work that brain out a little bit. Same thing with Search for Planet X is really, really fun because you get these rules and the rules kind of change from game to game.
Yeah.
In Turing Machine, again, the verifiers that you're asking questions of your little analog computer are going to change from game to game, and based on those verifiers and stuff and those rules of the code or the where Planet X is, you can start to, parse information and kind of whittle stuff down. It's so satisfying to do every single time.
Yes.
And again, that's why I'm like, I don't need this to be a competitive game. I don't need this to be a game, period. I just like playing with the machine and trying to figure out the answer. It's so immensely satisfying.
It's really, really fun and satisfying. So really any kind of logic deduction games, we usually prefer solo, but these ones are definitely great examples of that. So that's number 3. Let's go ahead and get number 2. Number 2, I think was our number 1 last time we did this, and this is Feast for Odin. The Feast for Odin is so good, and it's got one of the smoothest dang solo modes ever.
And it's clever.
Yes.
It's clever in that in Feast for Odin solo, you're just playing Feast for Odin, you're just trying to get the highest score you can.
Yeah.
But what you're doing here that makes it kind of interesting and actually presents you with a different kind of challenge is that you're playing with 2 different color of workers in the same game.
Yes.
And in the first round, you're going to put all your workers out and stuff that you have available to you, taking actions, doing all the normal stuff that you would for Feast for Odin. But at the end of that round, those workers stay on the board. And then you're going to pick up your second color of workers and add them to your little pool. And for that second round, everything that you covered up in the first round is unavailable to you. You cannot use those actions. At the end of the second round, those new workers stay on the board. You pull back your workers from round 1, and then you go again. That simple idea that I'm only going to have this certain action every other round available to me makes you have to make considerations in the game that maybe you wouldn't, if you could, in theory, spam the same action spot over and over and over in a multiplayer game. And here you have to diversify just a little bit more. And I like the added little brain puzzle of that, of like, I really want that piece. I wanted to be able to do this turn. What else can I consider? What else can I work on? Where else can I go?
Yeah.
It's just really fun and smooth, but it takes no extra brain power. There's not an opponent you're going against. It's just simply your own actions caused you to block stuff, and now you have to figure that out.
Yeah, it's cool. This is an Uwe Rosenberg game, and in Uwe Rosenberg's newer game, Atiwa does a similar thing where you're constantly blocking yourself. It just is simple, and especially like with a worker placement game, it just makes sense, and it's really, really cool.
Yeah.
And I wish more games would do it because I think it's really, Feast for Odin is so much fun solo. It's just, in terms of like games that I love solo and multiplayer like equally, this might be like the top one. It's just so darn good both ways.
You can play the same great game.
Yeah, it's really outstanding. Feast for Odin is just an absolute killer. It's not quite the number 1 anymore, so let's go ahead and get into number 1.
So number 1 is Legacy of You.
Which
this
is a
solo only game.
That's it, yeah. It makes sense, right?
Yeah, so this is from Garfield Games and their Ancient Anthology series. And it's a solo campaign game, a resettable campaign. It's not Legacy, you're not tearing stuff up, so you can reset it and play it again and again. But in this game, you are trying to kind of, it's kind of a tough time. The Yellow River is basically flooding constantly. And it's a hard time, and people are not doing well. And so you're trying to basically build out these canals to kind of tame the river and stop it from killing people and stuff like that, the flooding and things like that. So this is a tight resource management game where you're going to get a pool of workers every round, some resources to use, and you're trying to work on these canals, building out sections. There's barbarians that are coming to attack you all the while, so you need to kind of manage that as they're coming in and recruit people to kind of help you do this work.
Yeah.
And it's dangerous work, and at times you're going to be losing people, which means cards that you've accumulated are going to go out of your deck.
Yep.
Every time you cycle through that deck, so it's kind of some deck building in that.
Yep.
Every time you cycle through your deck, this flood marker moves forward, which is the timer in the game. You have like a little player marker, a little boat, and if the flood marker ever reaches that, you've unfortunately lost.
You had to have built canals beforehand so the water can go off
Basically, it's
and
staving
not flood.
Yeah.
And so there's a couple different ways you can lose the game. You can be overrun by barbarians, you can lose due to the flood, and it's just so hard.
Yeah.
It's so difficult, but as the game goes, if you lose, you're essentially going to be unlocking stuff as you go.
Yeah.
And if you lose, you'll probably get some stuff to make your game a little bit easier. If you're winning a bunch, you'll probably get some stuff that make your game harder. It's a 7-game campaign, and they say like when you go through the campaign, you're going to see like a third to like 30 to
40
40% of the game.
Yeah.
But you're not going to see all of it because it kind of depends on what comes out. It depends on like how
Certain
you're winning,
cards
how
that get
you're
unlocked
losing.
and revealed. Yeah.
So it's cool because you can play through it multiple times and still see new stuff. But even if you don't see new stuff, it's just, I mean, I've played just the like first scenario once. We have a kind of a spoiler-free one.
edition, yeah.
And it's so fun just like that without anything changing. So like Legacy of You is, I mean, it's a solo-only game. Garfield Games crushes it always.
Yeah, Garfield makes
It's
games
so
that we
fun.
really enjoy. They hit our personal happy spot.
Yes.
And so now Legacy of You is a solo game in that kind of model of games that are like going to just really be enjoyable for us. Again, you have this pool of workers. How do you best eke out everything you can out of the resources, the workers you have? The different color of workers matters and where they kind of go. What do you unlock? What do you focus on? Because you kind of have to do everything. You're not going to be able to do that, but you got to do your best to kind of keep it going. It's really fun. I'm like halfway through the campaign. I've won once. I've lost many more times than that. But as you do, again, the game kind of self-levels for you. Which is really exciting. So it's super fun, great production, great art. It's contained. It's not a huge box. It's not a huge board. So it's just very contained and right in front of you. So for a solo game, I don't want to be reaching way over there. It's only me here at the table. I can't ask for help.
Fair.
So I love everything about it. It's a perfect flex. Legacy U is very good.
It's incredibly good.
Yes.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Legacy U is incredible. It's a number one. Love it, love it, love it. It's so good. There's more of these, I feel like, solo-only games.
So cool.
A couple were on the list, a couple were mentioned during the list, and it's just so cool to see people catering to this, to these people, including us, because solo gaming is really, really rad. So down in the comments, let us know, what are your favorite games to solo? They could be solo-only games or games that you just have a solo variant for. And again, over on our Patreon, you can see our patrons are swinging by right now.
Thank you, patrons.
We're going to have 10 more games that we would like to solo, so make sure to go check that out and support. If you got a couple extra dollars, you can throw them at our faces. We appreciate it. And so that'll be over there, and I think that's going to be it, Mikey.
Absolutely. Until next time, I am Mike.
I'm Nick.
Those are top 10 solo games for us. Let us know what you got in the comments below, and we'll catch y'all next time.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you so much for watching that top 10. Let us know down in the comments below some of your favorite solo games. We really, really like them a lot. Make sure to check out the other top 10s on the right side of your screen as well. We want to give a big shout out to our channel sponsors, Restoration Games, Lucky Duck Games, and Board Game Geek. I want to give a big shout out to you for watching this top 10 and to make it this way. We're very obnoxious. It's hard to make it this far, so thank you for doing so. Love ya.